Hello and welcome to the Morning Skate Podcast. I am Matt Moody, joined by DJ Mitchell. We're here to talk about the Thursday, January 25th NHL Daily Fantasy Slate. DJ, how you doing on this fine Wednesday evening?
Great. Never better. Everything's gone perfectly. I've never missed a single bet. And we're ready to move forward and win more money tonight. How about you?
Yeah, same. I mean, win more money. Sorry, I'm just plugging in my laptop because I forgot that I did not do that. And now you can see what I'm doing on the video, and I'm sure that's weird. Okay.
Everything looked weird off the beginning, I'm not going to lie. And I'd rather just keep it and roll with it at this point, because if you're watching, you would see my face be very confused at what was going on over there. But yeah, no, I'm not going to get on my soapbox. Just going to, I went 5 of 6. I missed by one shot on goal for the nth time, it feels like, but I was really, really lucky to get there. Like, I had no business being a 5 of 5 going into Zibanejad. Tage got absolutely bailed out. Evander Kane didn't have 3 shots and got awarded a third that missed the net, it looked like to me. So whatever, we move forward. I'd rather be 5 of 6 than 0 for 6. I'd rather be winning money than losing money. And I am just going to keep doing what I'm doing. And when eventually I will get that last shot.
Yeah.
How was your week so far?
Yeah, it's been, last night was frustrating. I mean, in the Discord, we got credit for a fantastic pod. But, it did not come to fruition for either of us in the DFS streets. I did not go with Dallas. So that was pretty, I don't know. It was kind of upsetting, but mostly just frustrating. Like, oh yeah, had the right read and just didn't really follow through with it. I got suckered into Sean Monahan night. I gotta say that's easily one of the worst plays I've made of the year. Just just trusting numbers and not really using my head there. So Josh Wallace sent back down to the AHL as well. So there you go. Yes, exactly. I joined the head bashing keyboard bros on this night. So with all that said, though, I had still had a decent night because I got bailed out on underdog. I did have a Dallas one full stack with Kucherov that finished second. So, made 600 on like 20 something in total entries over there. So, didn't quite pay for the DFS with the 432 ticket that I had entered for the qualifier, but, can't really complain. So it's all good. We're here to talk about it.
Massive night for process over results. That's all I was going to say. I think for both of us, like, I feel like I did everything exactly correct, and it led me to Rangers or Dallas 1, and I just chose wrong. It just, we can move forward. But again, I do think very good envisionment of the slate from us, and hopefully it came through for you. And tonight it's going to come through again. Happy Thursday. Matt, are you ready to do the thing?
Yeah, let's talk about the sponsor of this show, DraftKings. So they obviously sponsor this show on the sportsbook side, but we mentioned last show the Pick Six. That's something that if you are able to do it, please do. But otherwise, besides the DFS, let's talk about the DraftKings Sportsbook. We know hockey games move fast, but with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, you can score faster than anything happening on the ice. This week, new customers can bet $5 and get 200 instantly in bonus bets. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app with code THPN, the Hockey Podcast Network, THPN. New customers bet just $5 on the NHL and get 200 instantly in bonus bets. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code THPN. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-878-9777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/hockey for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. All right. So we do have 8 games on the ledger, 9 games on the ledger here. While I pull up the slate, do you want to start reading us through them?
Sure. We have the Philadelphia Flyers at the Detroit Red Wings to start us off. A nice 6.5 over under. Last slate, we talked about how the Flyers Lightning was a nice over or under bet, and it went way over with Kucherov going nuclear. But 6.5 to start it. And again, I don't really love that over, but that's fine. Red Wings, a slate minus 130 favorite. We have the Islanders at the Montreal Canadiens. 6 over under, not too surprising. Minus 155 on the Islander side. Boston is at the Ottawa Senators. Boston on a back-to-back. Still favorites at minus 140, 6.5 over under. Arizona on a back-to-back against Tampa Bay. Tampa, pretty big favorites at minus 200. It's a 6 over under to be expected. New Jersey at Carolina. Carolina on a back-to-back. It's a 6.5 over under. Carolina minus 155. Devils have been, scoring. So that's, I guess, part of that, but seems odd again, 6.5. Anaheim at Dallas. This is a very big minus 310 Dallas favorite, 6.5 total. So Dallas could be popular again. Who's to say? Nashville at Minnesota. Basically a pick on minus 120 on the Minnesota side, 6 over under, minus 110 on both sides on that one. Columbus at the Calgary Flames. This is a pretty big minus 198 Flames favorite, 6.5. And finally, I'm going to ask Matt to predict it because I don't want to just read it. We have the Chicago Blackhawks on a road back-to-back. I believe, right? Road back-to-back. Am I wrong?
That's right.
Road back-to-back out in Edmonton. Matt, guess that money line.
Okay. Well, Edmonton has won now 14 straight.
Correct.
And Chicago has not. I'm going to go
They have not won 14 straight now.
Minus 487.
You didn't give Edmonton enough credit. Minus 600.
No
minus
way.
600. It is a 2.5
shit.
minus 110 puck line.
Okay, well that is psychotic. But okay.
Yeah, I did not expect that. 6.5 total. I kind of like the under. I honestly like. Whatever, we'll get to it. Let's get to the slate. Let's just get right into the slate, folks. Let's get you what you've been waiting for. All right, Matt, get us started with your goods. Also, you picked the wrong filter and my thing is falling, so let me fix it because I got too excited.
I genuinely have zero idea what that means.
I thought you were going to talk about the thing. You don't want to talk about the thing?
Oh, the thing that's on the screen.
This filter, custom layout 3, is better than the one you picked, which is not this one. You picked this one.
Oh, that's just a default. I didn't click on it. Okay, I did not click on it. That's yeah. Okay.
I'm going to mute myself for a second. You talk about something. I gotta fix my light.
Okay, so yes, we look at the matchups here on the YouTube, but basically what we're looking at is extreme Edmonton chalk. Not surprising. And then maybe not that surprising, but slightly more surprising is the Islanders in a very strong matchup against Montreal. And then really surprising, we have Ottawa against Boston. And that's mostly because Ottawa's been strong with underlyings. But the main premise is that Boston has just been fine defensively. And, they'll be on a back-to-back here with a very tough matchup against Carolina on Wednesday. And Ottawa will be at home. So, it's kind of interesting, this Ottawa matchup. Otherwise, I think we'll see some ownership on Tampa, back-to-back Arizona, and Dallas taking on Anaheim. I guess Anaheim's on the road, but not on a back-to-back. So, there's 9 games, so I'm not expecting super low ownership across the board. But it does feel like there's a few spots that it really could pile into. So as long as you're not going too outrageous in terms of playing, high owned, basically one of those 4 teams besides Ottawa that I mentioned, with another one of those 4 teams, you probably don't have to worry about anything as far as ownership. So that's sort of the main slate overview. We're not expecting any major injuries here. Werenski returns, Heiskanen's maybe back. And then we're looking at Bo Horvat should be in because he practiced today. So I think we're mostly clean on the injury front. Any other stuff you wanted to cover off the bat before we get into the first game?
No, let's get into the first game. We'll cover it along the way. Also, there was a brawl to start the game. Did you know that was going to happen? Because that literally just happened.
Yeah. Yeah. It
It's so
was like
funny.
fourth lines.
Yeah, you said that, and I was like, so yeah, hockey is fun, and go watch that if you like it. But we'll get started with a game that could also have some fireworks. The Philadelphia Flyers. Maybe you've heard of John Tortorella. Maybe you haven't. If you haven't, guy is angry all the time. We'll be going to Detroit again. Detroit, city of city of champions right now. I don't think this game's going to be popular, as you've already kind of alluded to. I don't think it really should be all that popular. But again, we just talked about this last slate where we're like, man, these two teams kind of feel stinky. And the game ended up being like 10 goals. So is there are you a believer in the Flyers regression that could be coming? Are you thinking that Detroit might be under, or is it the pricing just doesn't matter anyways? Even if this game is slightly better than expected, it's still way overpriced.
Yeah, I mean, there's really not a ton to like on the Flyers front, or honestly the Detroit front. Like Larkin remains somewhat productive, but at the price, it's just, 8,000. It's just a ton to pay for a dude who you really can't bank on for much of anything. So I don't know. I don't think this game is a ton of fun. Obviously, we just saw what Kucherov did, but that feels like more of a Kucherov thing than it is a Flyers thing. So yeah, I'm low key disinterested here. If Tippett's back, maybe, but I don't think it's all that likely. I guess one final thing is I'll note a few places where players are not playing because of presumably the Hockey Canada suspensions, or maybe not suspensions, but actual legal action. So obviously we're not going to talk about that situation in general, but do keep an eye on some of these places because Carter Hart's not playing, for instance. So that's the main the main reason I think that I bring this up. But there's some other spots on the slate where it is at least worth mentioning and worth monitoring because we're not fully confirmed on these guys, but we think that they're we think we have the main culprits for now. All right. I don't know. I feel like I said a lot of nothing,
Yeah,
but
I'll
I'm just
mention
not
two.
interested.
Yeah. I think you said a lot of nothing as well. But I'll say two notes. Number one note, I have at least minor interest in Philly, very similar to you, and very much because of the potential Owen Tippett return that would definitely boost my interest. But if they continue to be 11-7, which is expected, they are giving a lot of minutes to the entire top six, and I think Detroit's actually kind of bad. Detroit, revenge narrative, Shane Gostisbehere, 24 minutes of ice time last time out against Dallas in a game they were trailing most of the time. Is there at least, are you considering him a little bit more because of that run? Or are you just saying who even cares? Let's move on.
It's hard to think there's a real reason for Gostisbehere to get those minutes, so I'll need to be more sure on how things look. I like Ben Sherratt, was that injury really the reason? I don't know. Feels more circumstantial than anything else in that this was like a really explosive 5-4 game. I don't think that happens here. So maybe a bit more knockdown, drag out, and that's probably where we get to. All right, let's move over to the Islanders and Montreal. I have a lot more interest here, obviously.
Yep.
Actually, where do you want to start here? Because I feel like with Montreal at home, it is sort of defensible to go either way in this matchup.
Well, I guess if you're just going to completely ignore the biggest narrative of the night, then we'll just ignore the biggest narrative of the night. We won't even be the Morning Skate podcast. We'll just move on, not even mention Patrick Waugh returning to Montreal as the head coach in New York. We'll just forget about it. You're right. Let's not remember the fact that Islanders are going to be trying extra hard tonight. Anyways, I kind of do like the Islanders, though. I just wanted to go on a rant there for a second. I'm on camera right now. The lights are shining, and I'm just feeling it after being just obliterated night in and night out with not winning my bets. You know what happened last game, Matt? Aiden Hill stood on his head. He saved Vegas.
Yep.
He gave about 40 saves. Dobson, 28 minutes, like 115 shot attempts. Matt Barzal, 25 minutes. Shot attempts were there. Horvat, Nelson, Lee. Everything I said that was going to happen is happening. They're shooting. It's going to click one night. I am not saying you have to do it here, but the prices that were really high and they were unaffordable, in my opinion, have kind of leveled into the same spot or a little bit cheaper. And yeah, I mean, I think they're worth it now. So if Horvat's in, which I know he's, day to day or whatever, I think he's probably fine. He left the game, but I didn't see anything to note that he'd be out. But keep an eye on that, of course. Keep an eye on lines tomorrow. But all of this to say is, like, I think keep an eye on the Islanders, and I mean it. Like, Dobson played more than anyone on defense by a lot.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, the minutes, we mentioned, and it certainly seemed to come to fruition with the power play time and whatnot. I mean, anytime you can get 25 Barzal minutes, I think that's the clear leading candidate. So Lee, Horvat, Barzal, very, very good. I don't know if you referenced it or not, but I said earlier that we did see Horvat's practice today, so he seems fine. Just maybe repairs yesterday or something, but he should be good to go here. So that's the clear top target. Their prices are, I think, reasonable. I do think you really want to consider Anders Lee. He's not quite. I mean, I don't know. He's been really solid as far as his underlyings. So I'm not that worried about the fact that like he doesn't have a point in whatever X number of his last 10. Like he's there. He's not doing a ton, but you don't need a ton at 4,100 to pay off. And I think the rest of his line mates can definitely carry him in what's a really good matchup. So getting over to Montreal, they got spanked by Ottawa. That really was, kind of just listless. So like I mentioned, Joshua Waugh or Roy got sent down. So like we're gonna see some mixed up bottom lines. I just don't think it's smart to go back to that. Well, like Sean Monahan was 4,200. He's all the way up at 4,600 now. Like it's just one of those things where like, okay, you made one mistake, don't parlay it into a secondary mistake. And there's really no one else in the depth that I'm seeing is like remotely interesting. So, is there anything for you outside of the top line plus Matheson that stands out?
I was actually really shocked last slate at the ownership that it got. And I don't really think it's going to follow suit here, but I do think the Islanders are playing up tempo, as I said. And I am interested in guys like Cole Caulfield, who were pretty good in that game. I mean, all considered, like I did end up watching a lot of that. I overstacked Ottawa, not to much success. And I mean, Cole Caulfield does just always look electric. He had a post, 5 shots on goal, and 4 misses. And it's because that was the only line that was really clicking. So I do think you could very easily convince me to bring it back with just Cole Caulfield and feel just fine about it. Like if you're playing, a stack on the other side, like that's where the offense is going to come through. And I just don't think you're gonna have enough for Matheson in that scenario. But he's also incredibly involved in a blocks guy and all that nonsense. So yeah, I love Caulfield and an Islander stack. I really do like that to start the slate, and it's going to get you away from what's going to be absolute uber chalk. And we'll get to that at the end.
Yeah, something really interesting that I don't know was mentioned, and then I can't really tell if it came to fruition, but Montreal only did roster 3 centers, and technically they listed Harvey Pinard as a center, and I swear he did play some shifts at center, but honestly, I'm not really seeing much of that. Like I'm seeing literally a few shifts at center, and maybe that's just what he is. He's a fourth line center right now. But that does leave the door open to Suzuki like double shifting. So I don't know. I'm not overly sold on the idea that Suzuki's like this great play. Like I think he's really only in play if you're stacking him with Caulfield anyway. But at least something to monitor because it's not often we see teams with 12 forwards deploying their lines like they only have 11, and that's basically what we saw last game out of Montreal. So at least keeping an eye on Nick Suzuki,
Yeah,
but 5,600,
sure.
not really that worthwhile. Punts on defense. I don't know. Arbor Jackey's back. Jonathan Kovacevic came back.
Yeah.
He scored their goal. Is there anything there for you, or are you just kind of like, yeah, just a few 2.5K guys, but nothing I care about?
I mean, Jack, I played power play too. So, at least there's something to that, in my opinion, but they both played like 15, 16 minutes. It is probably the most difficult combination of defensemen as a pairing in the entire slate. So that's fun. But yeah, I mean, if you gunned ahead, I guess Jack Eye is an option, but I'm not going to the bank on it.
Okay. Yeah. Makes sense. Just, keep in mind if you need a punt that those guys are in now because for whatever reason. All right. Boston, Ottawa. Where are you looking in this spot? I mentioned off the top the fact that Boston not the best defensively as of late. So, any interest in going back to say the Brady Kachuk well?
Yeah, I think I'd rather stub my toe into any door frame I could find. But honestly, I am interested. Like I'm more interested in Ottawa than I am for Boston. Not by a metric ton. It's kind of one of those things where the more I think about how I'd stack Ottawa, the more I think, why am I just playing all these guys when I just kind of like the Islanders a little bit more? So it's going to be tough to pivot. It kind of felt like the same thing last slate with a couple different teams, where I talked about like the Sabres versus Ottawa, and it's like this kind of feels like the same situation where it's like I like the Islanders a little bit more than Ottawa. They're about the same price. Yeah, it's a back-to-back Boston team, and it's probably, I mean, it's going to be less owned, but by how much, right? I mean, is it going to be so much less owned that it's actually creating a lot of leverage for me? I don't think so, because I don't think the Islanders are going to be all that chalky, especially in like a 3-man Dobson type of scenario. So I don't think you're really gaining a ton of value by going to the Senators over the Islanders in that realm. So unless if you have a much better projectable outcome, and again, I agree that it's through Sanderson, it's through Brady in that peak games scenario, but I just don't know if I want to sit there and again jam my toes into every door frame I can find and just be angry, stepping on rakes.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
No. So
The
yeah, I
football
mean,
is held down. I'm ready to kick it.
yeah, and obviously Brady burned a lot of people last slate. But over the last stretch, he's been Ottawa's best player by a landslide as far as their underlyings are concerned and whatnot. So I do think you got to give it a look. I would imagine they keep Norris and Giroux on his line, but we do get some value on the second line and the third line in Ridley Gregg and Shane Pinto. Pinto's been priced up a little bit, so he doesn't show up on the point per dollar projection, but he did score last slate, so that helps. And obviously on the Boston front, it's Pasternak or pretty much no one. Like if you're not building around Pasta, I'm not really sure what you're doing with Boston. So um, this is a
Yeah.
very interesting spot. Boston with Marchand and Coyle is not that interesting, but they're in a matchup right now against Carolina, who theoretically could beat them. And if the lines go into a bit of a blender, they do have some players who have been rather productive as of late. I don't think Trent Frederick gets into the top six. Stop me if I'm wrong, but Danton Heinen could, and he's been surprisingly effective. It's one of those things where I would obviously need to look into like why he's showing up as being somewhat productive over the last stretch. But 2.5 shots a game, 3 goals, 5 points in the last 10. It's just it's just one of those things where keep an eye on the lines, because if that sort of thing changes, then I want to be on top of it. Whether he's with Marchand or Pasternak. But yeah, right now, not interested in Coyle. Like, just
Yeah.
no, thank you. All right. Anything
Arizona
else on this
and
game?
Tampa.
Cool.
No, I'm good. I'm not playing Boston. Arizona, Tampa. You before we started, like right before we started, what held us up was waiting for these Arizona lines, which were not exactly as we expected. They're already down 1-0 in Florida. So who's to say they couldn't change a little bit? But it's Schmaltz returned, Bukestad, Keller. Schmaltz wasn't there last game, right? Or did he come back? No, I can't even remember.
Schmaltz just returned. This is his first game back.
Yeah, first game. I thought so. I think it's sure. Kraus, Kerfoot, Vincelli, a bunch of other guys. Cooley with Gunther and Zucker and the fourth line of garbage. So doesn't really make it move all that much, but they're on a back to back. No one's gonna play them. Do you have any interest in a guy like Bukestad? I guess that's really the guy that sort of like to me stood out a little bit, but it's not that cheap. Just want to kind of mention that before we go over to Tampa.
Yeah, that's the primary issue. We can't project him to get a power play role until we see it, or I guess a power play one role until we see it. And 4,300 is just a good bit to pay on a back to back for this team. Uh, Arizona was rolling 11-7. They're now back to 12-6 after Dumba got hurt. If for some reason that changes, then I think Keller and whoever he's with is a very in play, just because what we saw out of them with 11-7 was truly Patrick Kane-esque from Patrick Kane's glory years, where he was playing on two different lines at the same time. So you're getting Keller at 5,800, like that's not a great value as it stands. But if he's double shifting and you get cheap guys like Gunther and Cooley, or even like Bukestad or whatever, like I think that's more reasonable, just because then that Keller's so much more likely to be quote unquote optimal if Arizona does hit. So right now, not interested, but this is certainly another wait and see spot after what happens on Wednesday. I'm curious to see if Gunther stays on the power play, because that's really been his only real role that we can project now that they're not playing Keller with him and Cooley. So it's a little bit of a wait and see there, but 3,900 for Gunther. He leads the team in shot rate. It's not really produced much over the last stretch, but yeah, that's really the only thing I'm waiting on. I don't think I'm going to make it up to Sean Dursey, and defensively, I'm not sure there's enough here for me to feel good about any of these punts. Though, if you like one, obviously there's a lot of minutes to be had with only two guys above 3K on the Arizona blue line.
Yeah, so that's all good. I didn't expect to go on that much about Arizona, to be honest. But I guess the good news is Tampa is not too difficult to cover. Yeah, it's kind of Kucherov breaks the slate or doesn't. It feels like I don't know if there's any other angle you're looking into, and then after you've coursed through all the data. But Kucherov, Stamkos' point had been it's a four-headed monster. They did run 11-7 last slate, which in retrospect, I think that's the one thing where it's like maybe we should have been a little bit more keen on 2% Kucherov. That just feels like a mistake in large part, just being too afraid of Philadelphia, which again is just a mistake, to just say like, well, I'm not going to attack this team that no one expected to be good, in this matchup with this elite of a player. And I was scared off of it myself. I'm not saying I wasn't. Like, I didn't play it, obviously. 98% of the field was afraid of it, and that was a mistake. I don't think it's going to be 2% here, obviously, but do you have any interest in going back and putting your running shoes on and chasing down one of the best players in the league and Nikita Kucherov?
I mean, this is going to be very different, I think, because there's going to be substantial ownership.
Yeah.
I mean, I would be shocked if there weren't. So because I mean, it's not like Kucherov had 10 shots last game either. So the main problem with Kucherov is that the shot rate isn't really running through his tape. Or I guess, the shots aren't concentrated on his stick the way that they were earlier in the season. Like he's still generating a lot of offense, but it's guys like Hedman and Point and Stamkos really chipping in and taking some of those shots. And that makes it much less likely to one-off Kucherov. The price makes it so that it's really hard to stack around Kucherov. Like you are basically just full punting everything if you stack Tampa here. So it's tough. I will say there's really not a ton of ways that I can think of that I would wind up playing Tampa here. But I obviously will concede that Kucherov could easily win the slate. It's just really hard for me to build teams around it that I like, that I feel win enough to make it worth it. So just one guy to keep an eye on, Mikey Isamont. He's a longtime favorite here. Did play on that second line. That still only generates 14 minutes of ice time for him. But with Sorelli and Hagel, there's worse punts at 2,800. He even got a Schmeckel of power play time too. So we always like that.
And scored the power play too.
He...
Yeah. And speaking of Arizona, they're down 3-0 already, about halfway through the first period as we're recording this. So I'm not sure if that's going to entice people more or less to jump on Tampa, but just want to point that out. I have nothing else. You grabbed the Isimon thing. I was going to maybe mention if you had any interest in Hagel or Sorelli, but we could just keep it going. I'm not going to be playing them myself. So are you ready to get over to New Jersey and Carolina?
Yep. Yeah, interesting. Another back-to-back team with Carolina here.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just starting, so we have no insight into sort of what they're gonna look like or what they're gonna change. But Svechnikov didn't play Wednesday. Would probably assume that means he doesn't play on Thursday. Um, so let's see on the Carolina front, Bunting, Aho, Teravainen, would expect that to remain into Thursday. So that means that Michael Bunting is, a decent value, 4,200. I don't know though if I just would rather play Nachas and his punty line mates instead. Like it's not like Sebastian Aho is going to play like 28 minutes. And like Nachas has gotten a really good role. Since he's returned,
And he's been
17
shooting.
minutes in each of these games. And yeah, he's shooting, scoring, looks really dynamic for his price tag. So I'm kind of torn between whether I want to punt here or whether I want to sort of go in the mid tier with Aho and his line mates. Any thoughts there?
I mean, I honestly have no problem one-offing Nachos and not really overthinking it too much. Even with Nachos, as we were kind of discussing right now, like he had, 18, 19 minutes back to back, 5, 6 shots on goal, multi points, scored in both games. Like none of his line mates really came along for the ride. I don't know. I mean, you could definitely play one of them, but I don't know if you need to go all the way. I do think that's a way that you're going to walk yourself into Edmonton 1, and I think that's kind of getting into what's going to end up being pretty chalky on this slate. So that's probably my biggest hesitation. Are you at all interested in Burns or anyone else to go along with it? Like, is there anything else you'd add to the mix outside of just whatever line mates end up sticking with Nate Charles? Because actually, now I think about it, was this even the line he had last game? Because Svechnikov's out now, so they may have not even had the same line.
This is the
Played
same line.
Minnesota, right?
Yeah, this is what they
Yeah.
had,
Yep.
Mason, Drury, Nachas. So, they certainly would not correlate with Burns. Like, he's the power play one guy. He's also
Yeah, they're
very
in power play
expensive
one.
now.
What the heck? Yeah.
I don't.
Huh.
I mean,
Nachos
they've
not even
had
power
Burns on
play
the power
one.
play one
What was
for. Wait. Oh yeah, Nachas. Yeah, Nachas is
Nachos
not power play
was
one.
it? I thought he was. That's kind of part of the point I was making there. He just gets more 5-on-5 run than both his line mates and isn't power play. Okay, do whatever you got to do. Okay, yeah, I don't know. I could still talk myself into Nachos, but it's feels a little bit thin. But his price is cheap. I don't know. I'm gonna have to really think about
Yeah, I
this
mean,
one. This is interesting.
yeah, keep an eye on ownership. If this is a sub 5% stack and you can play Edmonton with it, like I mean that's that's the jackpot right there. I
Yeah.
think so. Because Drury is fine. We know Nason can go on runs. He's been rather productive. Like for a sub 3K guy, he's got a pretty decent game log. Um, and obviously playing with Nachas should help. I truly do think this is the second line in Carolina. Like that the minutes are there and everything. So I do expect it to be pretty popular, but maybe the optimizers are just like, oh, it's the fourth line, like blah blah blah. It's possible that
Yeah.
it gets overlooked. So anyway, New Jersey against the back-to-back Carolina team. Any interest in them chasing the Tyler Toffoli hat trick and 7-shot game from last time out? Jesper Bratt had 10 shots and is on a crazy run himself with 47 over his last 10. Any interest in New Jersey here?
I guess a little bit. Just I don't think they're going to be very popular. It's Carolina, nevertheless. I'm a little bit discouraged by these lines in Carolina. Like I'm saying, it feels a little bit clunky. They can definitely give up goals in bunches. I mean, they're down to Spencer Martin, who wasn't there like a month ago for a reason. It's not, it's certainly not because everyone else is getting the job done. So if we are seeing concentration of, offensive role We're also expecting lines will have to change. Michael McLeod isn't going to be there. So he's one of those players we kind of mentioned that wouldn't be with the team. And 12 foot, but he played 12 minutes. Who really cares? Toffoli gets moved kind of off the line with Nico Hischier and Bratt. Timo Meier goes up. They originally had him off the first power play. That didn't last. He went back in for Bastian late in the game. So keep an eye on that front. Like, it really kind of felt like a weird spot for that to get there, but I definitely could get talked into this top line pretty easily. And maybe Luke Hughes with it, maybe not, but Bratt, Timo, Hischier, it's not mid range, but as you're kind of showing up top here, like all of these guys are producing shots. All of these guys, I guess a little bit minus Nico, but he's producing a lot of more dangerous chances, being the center. But yeah, I definitely am on board with it, and I definitely think it's going to be low owned. So I don't know if that means I'm going to have it. It might not make my be high enough up the board for me, but I think it's very sound.
Yeah, there's some reason to believe, like via coach speak and whatnot, that Timo was just truly hurt to begin the season. And he's shown it coming back from his injury. He's leading the team in expected fantasy points. He's got one of the best marks on the entire slate. He's only played 4 games in that stretch, so small samples, blah blah blah. They can balance out, but this is a player who we know is good for rates, and at 5,300, to fully 5,700. I don't hate the idea of saying, well, we know where the shots are going to come from in New Jersey, and we know that Carolina is liable to give up goals. So, just do the math. You can figure out, sort of how to make a decent mid-range stack. I don't think I'm playing Nico myself. 6,200 is just way too expensive for who he is. I don't think he has the upside I'm looking for. But I could easily see myself playing all 3 of Bratt, Toffoli, Timo, and just saying, look, this probably isn't the nuts, but I can get 1 really good score and 2 supporting scores in the right game environment. So remains to be seen how they deal with the loss of McLeod. I mean, they're literally looking at Hischier, Howlett, and Chris Tierney as their top centers right now. So Chris Tierney, oof. Dawson Mercer probably slides to the middle, so he's a guy to keep an eye on because he probably won't have a power play 1 job, but he's a good enough player, I think, to be considered in even strength stacks. But yeah, just a situation to keep an eye on as we move forward here without Jack Hughes. So let's get to Dallas and Anaheim. Anything to say about the Anaheim side? Did you have the fortune of watching the Buffalo Sabres on ESPN Plus last night?
I still bleaching my eye sockets. Just absolutely brutal. Yeah, I mean, whatever. Henrique, I'm not gonna say Henrique. Leo Carlson just feels like a guy that is this good. I'm not sure if that means he's this good for fantasy entirely yet, but he is absolutely a play driver. So whatever line he's on, I think it really does boost the players around them to a pretty good degree. Now, this is a terrible matchup. It's not to say that you're sitting here looking at 5K Leo Carlson and saying, wait, are you saying that this is a generational talent I should be on right now? I think 5K is probably correct, and it's a tough matchup. He did have the 5 shot bonus. I don't know if we've ever seen that from him. So might not be super. We've seen it a couple times, but not super repeatable, especially in a tougher matchup than Buffalo, who isn't. But guys like Troy Terry, etc. I definitely find with Leo Carlson that is quite a boost. I do think they'll continue to shuffle through lines quite frequently. McTavish seemed to be somewhat back in good graces. Owen Zellweger, probably the guy we need to talk about most at the end of this. He only had 14 minutes, but was on the power play with McTavish, Carlson, Terry, and freaking Sam Carrick, who of course had to score. But again, there's definitely interesting pieces in Anaheim to keep an eye on. Owen Zellweger probably being the most notable in that 13 minutes. Really, he didn't get close. He was 13 and a half. Hit the blocks bonus, had an assist, and had 2 shots on goal. So this is a prospect that has that pedigree and will continue to get more run as time goes on. This is going to take some time. They put him out there with Babushkin, who stinks. So I'm kind of hoping we find him in a role with a Gudas or something and kind of open him up offensively and let Gudas kind of sit back there and do whatever he does. But yeah, I wanted to mention that. There's a couple more little notes, but I think I'll pause, let you take another Silverberg lap, a victory lap if you'd like, and then I'll just sort of finish up because a lot of new stuff on the Ducks.
Yeah, let's close out the conversation about Zellweger and that power play unit first, because I need to reiterate that like Olin Zellweger is an absolute dynamo stud. Like this is Brant Clark levels of like, oh yeah, you gotta keep an eye out, and he's coming in at 2,500. So let's see, where is it? I'm just going through.
I mean, this honestly, it reminds me of Josh Morrissey, like, and Noah Dobson, like going back even further, like, but going back to the beginning of the podcast, and we were like gleaning over these prospects, like young players,
Shea
and like
Theodore.
we see what they've turned into. This is Shea Theodore, another perfect example.
Yeah.
That's who this guy is. So yeah, now while you got that up, I'll pause.
So this is a fun little chart that I had from the preseason, and basically what I did here is, audio listeners, it's in the Discord, you've seen it already, but basically when we look at the shot rates and sort of distancing them from the league average, so standard deviations outside the league average, that helps sort of draw back these juniors players and sort of put them on line with these guys playing professionally, in La Liga and the SHL and whatnot. But Connor Bedard was an absolute stud. But coming in, we knew this. He was going to be a shot monster. I wrote about it all on my silly newsletter thing. But when I ran the numbers, I'm like, wait a second. Like Connor Bedard's not standing out from his field. Like what the hell's going on here? And you look at this little WHL dot, and obviously this far one's Connor Bedard. He was just so outside the realm of normal. Olin Zellweger was a shade behind him in terms of his shot rate last year, and he's a defenseman. And he comes in, he has 4 shot attempts, he blocks 3 shots. I mean, he has 13 expected fantasy points, but puts up an actual, I think, 11.6 on the night. He's an absolute player. The minutes are going to be the main problem. This is the classic conundrum of prospects, and that you need to bet on the talent before you can bet on the role, because this Anaheim team does not offer a ton of challenges to him growing into a role as far as the players in front of him, but the coaches, and that's sort of the problem. So he's a great play. The problem is that I think there's an even better play at the minimum salary on the Anaheim Ducks. And, Jacob Silverberg finally got there for us. I don't really know how many times I need to repeat myself, but he is second on the team in shots per 60. He is playing on their number 1 power play. They're using that unit more than the Zellweger unit, in the Leo Carlson, McTavish, whatever. Silverberg is there. Silverberg was alongside Mason McTavish in this game. So Silverberg's, I think, the best play, salary, point per dollar on the entire slate. And, I get it. It's really gross. He's a bit washed. He's kind of bad, but 2,500 is just way too inexpensive for the role he has. And I get the matchup's not good, but you can play him as a one-off and be fine. You can play Zellweger too. Maybe don't play them together. I'm not sure you need that. But it's at least possible that Anaheim can get there all together. Anyway, now that all this new shiny toys are set aside, let's talk about Wyatt Johnston, because hey, that guy's pretty good, huh? Any thoughts on Dallas?
Yeah. I mean, it's just unbelievable. I don't understand what took so long to get here. It felt like, again, the beginning of the year, let's go back even further. Last year, the stats around kind of comparing Wyatt Johnston 5-on-5 to Leon Draisaitl 5-on-5, kind of like the funny, man, this Giants guy could really play and just isn't getting the role. And, Draisaitl scores so much on the power play. It's funny to say that they're kind of equivalent. And you finally give this guy that role. Again, think about Nikolai Ehlers, feels so similar, and he just flourishes because he's so incredibly gifted. And I'm not saying Pavelski's a slouch entirely, but just not as dynamic of a player anymore as I think Wyatt Johnston's becoming. So I think it really just boosts this line. I know they might give up a little more defensively, but that just kind of makes it even more interesting on the other side to play a couple of minimum salary freaking plays. And it's not like you need to break the bank for Toronto if you don't want to. So I'm still in on Dallas 1. I do think of all of these 6K-ish mid-range stacks, it'll be more popular than Ottawa, probably more popular than the Islanders, definitely more popular than the Devils. So you are playing into a bit of ownership, but I don't know how many people are going to overstack it, especially if, and I do expect Miro Heiskanen to return. I don't think he'll be very popular at all. Harley, if he doesn't return, don't think he'll be very popular at all as people try to get a Schmeichel of Edmonton in their builds. So yeah, I'm still in on Dallas, but I'm a little bit skeptical that like this could actually be where I pivot away just because of ownership considerations. But do you
Yep.
think they'll be all that chalky first off? And any other notes on Dallas one?
I'm presuming that the Dallas one chalk comes in full force.
Yeah.
Be cognizant though of this sort of thing, because like yesterday, I mean, we were like, yeah, Ottawa's gonna be chalk, and then guess what? Like it just didn't really materialize, and part of that's because you had to split it between Pinto and Kachuk, and even the second line was reasonable. And I don't think we're running into that situation here. But like Montreal one was more owned than Ottawa one, and just like you think about it for 1 second, you're like, huh, that's kind of silly, right? So maybe something like that happens here, where just Dallas falls through the cracks. So just keep your head down, make sure you're not missing anything. But my sense is that Dallas will be very owned. So you can definitely still stack them. I probably would not do it with, say, Edmonton. But the Johnston price tag is still way too low. He's really been one shot away from breaking multiple slates in the past couple of weeks, sitting on 4 shots 3 times, having multiple points 3 times in his last 5 games. So like, it's all there. He's clearly the guy I want to stack around, but that means Hintz, Robertson, and presumably, if Heiskanen misses, definitely Harley. I think that's a good different separator as far as ownership is concerned. And if Heiskanen's in, I'll consider Miro, which is kind of a peace offering at this point because of just how much better Evan Bouchard is for fantasy. Oh, DJ wandered off the screen because I slandered Miro and just buried him so hard. Yeah, there you go. He's got
this
a Miro
is my first opportunity to sound the Miro alarm. The bells are ringing in the streets right now. Matt said he might play Miro Heiskanen. I wasn't gonna.
You got me
come
there.
on. We're live on air, folks. Welcome back to the buzz. I'm gonna put this away though and shut my closet door really quick. So, you want to take us into Nashville, Minnesota?
Yeah, sure. So, Nashville, Minnesota, a lot less interesting things to talk about here, in all honesty. So starting things off with the Minnesota front, they did just beat the Capitals rather easily. So I would anticipate that Rossi, Kaprizov, and Zuccarello remain intact. I would expect Brock Faber to continue to score goals until he is 9,800. So just keep playing him. 5,500. Just back up the truck, dump all your money in. The Brock Faber bank is open, and he is paying out in hard cash. So yeah, I mean, just status quo for Minnesota. It's a good matchup. It's not a great matchup. So once again, Kaprizov will definitely be a very low owned, high upside player on this slate. But it's I'm hurting a little bit because I thought, oh, I'll play him on Tuesday, and he put up 1 blocked shot. Thank you, Kirill, for your service. So, I don't know. Any interest in like the Boldy Eriksson Ek pairing, or any interest in Nashville here?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it just comes down to, am I as interested in these groups as I am others? I definitely think it's Kaprizov or nothing for me. Just thinking about how he could break a slate comparatively to anyone else on this team, and it really doesn't come close. So only Kaprizov and his line mates, I think, in this scenario, just because it's not like you're getting a big savings on still power play 1, line 2, but like a big, like similar run in Eriksson Ek and Boldly. So yeah, I think I'm going to probably end up sitting this one out on Minnesota. But in general, this game is going to be very popular. The only player that, like, I mean, who's going to get the most ownership? Like, you think it is even Roman Yossi anymore? Has that well finally dried up of everyone playing Roman Yossi, or is it still living large?
I definitely think on this slate with the pricing, like Yossi will not be very owned.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
He's
Honestly,
been
might be Brock
shooting a
Faber.
ton blocks. I mean, yeah, I think he might be the most owned player. Yeah, it is interesting, but like Roman Yossi is the guy that double bonuses are just right there. He hasn't had a slate break. Like, he almost had a slate breaker. Actually, it's funny. He had a goal and an assist, and he got out. Like, he outscored himself the game before when he hit the blocks bonus. But he hasn't had like a slate breaker. But he's had over like 12 fantasy points in like 6 straight. And it's, again, I love getting a guy low owned that's this good. And that's almost more interesting to me, is going like Yossi Forsberg here. Like, I think
Yep.
if I'm feeling really, it's 8 p.m., so I'm probably not gonna be dead yet. But I'm reading this. I'll let you
Probably,
talk.
probably.
Freaking time. I almost knocked this over.
All right, so yeah, and I will recant that. UC Staros is probably going to be the most owned player on in this game because he's 7,400, and I
Yeah.
don't think the money line will be crazy in favor of Minnesota. So that's where the field will probably go to save some money and jam in these high end pieces. Anyway, yeah, Nashville is moderately interesting. We just don't get very good reporting out of them, so it's really tough to say with anything for certain. But Tyson Berry was a scratch last game. That would mean that Ryan McDonough should be power play too. He's cheap enough. He obviously can hit a blocks bonus at any time. I don't hate the idea of like oh, while everyone's punting to just try and fit in Edmonton, well, why not punt with these guys? McDonough is a good player. Tomasino's a good player. Like, is the role for them there? Not always, and that's why they won't be ridiculously owned, in my opinion. But yeah, it's certainly gross. Guryanov is getting power play 2 run, I guess. So 3,200 for him. Yeah, I guess it's not the stupidest thing if you go into battle with Guryanov and McDonough here. So there's a cheap stack. Otherwise, if you're spending up, I think I prefer Minnesota to Nashville. But we can move on to Columbus, Calgary.
Yeah. It kind of feels like we just trading. No, wait, no, never mind. I was going to say we're trading places, but the Flames didn't play Chicago last night. Edmonton played Columbus. I think. Okay. No, yeah. I would think it'd be traded Alberta matchups. That's untrue. Yeah, I mean, Flames should be somewhat popular as well because they could remain very cheap. Nazem Kadri, 6,100 is the most expensive forward. Everyone else still priced down a pretty good bit, and like the correlations are a little bit funky. Coronado didn't quite get there. The roll continued at about that 15-minute mark. He had 3 shots on net, 2,800 to go along with Kadri, and that, I believe, stayed. So again, like, there's some pieces here that I think you get excited about, some options that might be worth looking into. And I do think that comparatively to Dallas, Edmonton, Calgary, Edmonton will be a little bit less owned. And there's just more options of playing it as well. So you don't have to stick to a top line. You could really go all 3 lines, and I could probably convince myself that there's at least an option there. I don't think I'm getting to Blake Coleman personally, but I mean, the guy is leading the team in goals and assists, and people have played him in the past. But again, I don't think I'm going that way of playing a 5,400 Blake Coleman. I think I'd rather throw myself into the snowbanks of Buffalo. But yeah, I definitely think there's plenty of options here, and none of it's going to be incredibly chalk fast playing with Edmonton. Maybe Lindholm line, but I'm not even sure on that.
Yeah, and if it is chalky for Calgary, this is surprising. Like, Calgary's matchup does not look good at all, which kind of sounds weird because like Kadri's been pretty productive. Sharon Govich is going nuts. Like, there's guys across multiple lines that seem like they are like in play, and multiple defensemen. And the only reason that I guess this matchup looks good is if you only care about goals. And maybe Elvis is just broken forever. And, on this podcast, we just try not to worry about goalies too much, though. And so looking at the other side of the matchup, Columbus is like a plus matchup, which, again, just kind of weird. So the thing with Columbus is that there is a ton of value here, even with Zach Werenski back. Like, I think Boqvist is very much in play. He's turning into a top pair defenseman, and he is 30. He has 30, 300, so down 200 from last game. Voronkov is popping out, and we know that Johnny Gaudreau is, perennially in play because he has upside. He has very little floor, but revenge. DJ, how about that narrative for you?
I forgot about that one. All right, so there's two huge narratives on this slate, and I'm gonna turn in my badge. You're right. You forgot about one. I forgot about the other. The narrative exists with Gaudreau as well at 5-on-5 with Sillinger and Chinikov. They practiced today. I don't remember seeing lines exactly. That's stuck, right? Because I could be convinced that was all power play correlated with Boqvist. Of course, that could change with Werenski returning to the fold. But again, change. I mean, that is a very interesting. Yeah, that will change. But I do think that top line is. I mean, I think Chinikov can absolutely play. So I am actually a bit intrigued by the idea of if I'm playing Edmonton, if like that's a condition of my lineup, going with the Blue Jackets might not be actually the dumbest idea in the world. Call me insane.
I don't know that I want to spend the prices on Sillinger and Chinikov myself, but I don't know. It certainly makes sense to capture the Gaudreau stuff. I do think Gaudreau Werenski is a fine mini. I imagine they'll be correlated, and again, it's unlikely to hit because Johnny Gaudreau is just perennially a low floor player, but he does have upside for 4,300, and it's a great slate to say, look, I need some cheaper end options to play the high end dudes. So Gaudreau's in play. I think Kent Johnson's in play. I mentioned Voronkov having really strong rates over the last stretch. Like, he hit a blocks bonus and scored in Edmonton. He didn't get the minutes, but guess what? This team's losing. They need to figure out something. So they could wind up deploying that line more. Voronkov with Marchenko and Kent Johnson. So that's sort of what I'm leaning. Yeah, I just totally spaced. So yeah, I'm kind of interested in Columbus here as just like a look, just playing everyone in the late slate and hoping to get paid out. So final game of the night.
Yeah, let's just do it. Chicago back-to-back at Edmonton. Okay. Seidel. Whoa. Nugent Hopkins. Ooh. Vander Kane. Evan Bouchard. Okay. That's the Morning Skate podcast. Yeah. Have fun.
Yeah.
Enjoy your chalk. Hoover it up.
There's absolutely nothing to say here. We have nothing creative, nothing novel, nothing unique. But yeah, Edmonton is gunning for 15 straight wins, and Chicago is not. So let's get to top 6 guaranteed goals. There's really no news here to report on.
What's wrong with Chicago? Okay. Yeah, Chicago
everything's going exactly as planned, except for the fact that their child king got hurt. But they're losing like they want.
Can I just throw one name out there before we just completely
please do.
Just I'm gonna throw 2 names out there. Number one. Is there any part of you that looks at Alex Vlasic and this role and says, rates be damned? Actually, he's 3,600. Okay, never mind. The only thing I thought he'd be like minimum salary. Holy crap. Nick Foligno returned and did actually have a monster game. Like, I don't think I'm doing it at 3,800 or in any capacity, but like the guy had 9 shot attempts, 7 on net. Like, again, we're just in the same boat of like this guy's playing so freaking much. Like him, Reddish, and Kurashev, and at some point, like they could actually be an option. It's probably not here against Edmonton. Okay, top 6 guaranteed goals. You have to eat dinner.
Yeah, I'm literally not trying to rush. Like, I just genuinely don't think there's anything interesting to say here.
No.
Like, just play Edmonton if you can. Like, there you go. I solved it.
They're the best on the slate. Yeah.
Yeah, I would not expect Corey Perry to play either. So like, he might come in when they lose the game, but which might be never. So there you go. All right. My first stack of the night. Did you have one in mind?
Yeah. Of course, barring injury, Horvat, Lee, Barzal, Dobson. The whole thing for me.
Okay.
Trying to remember if Lee played power play 1 and I closed that out, but
He
you
did
know, if you don't want
not. It
all,
was still
I don't think, I didn't think he
pulmonary.
did. Yeah. So Lee could come out in theory, but I do think if that's what you needed, 4,100 honestly could be involved.
Yep. All right. I'm gonna go back to the Ottawa Painwell. The field was all over Jake
So
Sanderson last time. He scored for everyone. So I'm just gonna be an idiot and go back to the Jake Chikrin Pain station, play Josh Norris with it and Brady Kachuk because our stochastic friends just continually shit on Josh Norris, and I just don't think it's warranted. Like, we're playing fantasy, and he's a very good fantasy player. So, you maybe don't need to be that creative. You can just play Ottawa 1 plus Sanderson, but honestly, I have no interest in playing Claude Giroux. And I think that Norris and Chikrin are just the exact sort of guys that I want to bet on at super low ownership, where like they could easily, either one of them could score a hat trick, and it's not a shock. It's just one of those things where like the matchup, people are going to overlook it, but like, Boston's not been playing great. I think the top line goes against the top line here, and the top line for Boston's not been playing great. And Chikrin's with Chabot, and like Chikrin is setting up for one-timers and everything, and just it's not happening. I don't know why, but it will, because this is Jake Chikrin we're talking about, like a really, really good fantasy defenseman. So I'm just betting on Ottawa and hoping, praying that I don't get punished for it.
Well, I hope and wish you all the best. I will. I think I'm just gonna say like you really can't play these two together, but I'm just gonna do it. I think I'm gonna go with the Timo, Brat, Luke Hughes situation that we talked about, and they're subject to change, of course. So keep an eye on what the lines end up being tomorrow, and I mean they definitely could change. I mean they're definitely not going to be the same as they were last game, as I mentioned. So do keep an eye on that. But I'm gonna roll that for now.
Okay. I'll do Jack Drury with Nachas and Nason on the other side of that game. I do think that is my preferred way to punt here. So again, keep an eye on ownership. I don't know, whether the projection systems will pick up on Nachas and drag his line mates to the top with him, or whether they'll see that they're all technically fourth liners and drag them all down as a result. So just know that I think it's a really good matchup. I think Nachas is an outstanding player who's come back and is absolutely rolling. And those line mates are really not that bad. And that's about all you can ask for with this Carolina team at their current prices. So guarantee goals.
I got my 2 completely ready to go.
Okay, hit me with them.
Are you ready? Kirill
I am.
Kaprizov, Matt Coronado.
Ooh,
So yeah, you hear me? There you go.
spicy.
Bye-bye,
Okay.
everybody.
All right. I'm going to take Wyatt Johnston, 4,500. Yay, everyone. He did it. He picked a good player at a good price. Okay. For my 6,500 piece, let's go with. Well, we know that Charlie Coyle on the slander list is going to score, but I will go with. You picked Kaprizov. I won't take Boldy then. Let's go with Evander Kane. I don't know. He's really good. So, and he will shoot. So there you
Good
go.
call.
Congratulations to me on my 2
Yeah,
guaranteed goals.
they
Congratulations to you on your
they
2 as
did have
well.
they had a few shifts there, especially end of periods that were Kane, Draisaitl, and McDavid. I'm not sure if you noticed that as well. But it kind
Yeah.
of seemed like at the end of the first, I definitely noticed it, and then like midway through the second, at one point, I was like, I like this. Keep doing this. Then when they were struggling, I'm like,
Yeah.
this might work. So I like that
Yeah.
call.
Yeah. The team really likes Evander Kane. Like, obviously Hyman's been unbelievable this season, but like, it's not like he's out of there. plans. So yeah, I mean, just the pricing and the rates and whatnot. I just really like Evander here at a good price. All right, that'll do it. Make sure you sign up for DraftKings if you're someone listening to this the first time. Don't have an account. Code THPN here on your screen in the top right. You will get free money when you deposit and make a bet there. So thank you to them for sponsoring us. DJ, anything else?
Follow
He
me or
saluted.
don't, do whatever you
Oh, okay.
want. Like, subscribe, review. We'll be back.
Yes, we will. Actually, not for a bit though, because next week is pretty terrible. It's like 3 games a night for the next week, so we'll probably be back in a couple of weeks. We'll see if Saturday makes sense to do anything, but yeah, just be on the lookout because the schedule does lighten up a bit as we head into the NHL All-Star break and as we get ready for the NBA All-Star break. So DJ is ready to, I think, play some baseball or something, and I am ready to go eat some dinner. So let's get out of here. From Doug, from DJ, from myself, have your slate, everybody, and we will see ya.